Welcome back. Talk number 141. And would you believe I'm just for a moment back to broken color again? But the images you're going to see first here are Bunker, and this whole entire thing is going to be about Dennis Miller Bunker. This is thanks to a series of discussions that Lindsay Harkness and I are having. Lindsay, as some of you know, was the reason I even have a studio now, a longtime great friend. And uh, but she and I have been discussing broken color. She's been a pastelist her whole life, and is trying to manage that certain aspects of the broken color thing, plus the uh, doing it in oil paint and improving light, getting better light and that sort of thing. So a lot of the same things you all are working on. Remember when I was a student with Gemmell, there was this great stir about Dennis Miller Bunker, and and of course, Gamble had written a stir among us. Gamble had written a biography of Bunker uh, quite a few years before we arrived on the scene, and it was full of the kind of information you'd want to hear about things like seeing and impressionism and that sort of thing. And you'll see why in the course of this thing. But it's funny that it's so much of what people um like Bunker for is what they call his academic side. And the truth is he actually doesn't have one. I mean, it's a funny thing to say that, and I know people will smirk, but the time he spent with Jerome was very limited. It wasn't like he was there and for any significant amount of time. His earliest studies in New York appeared to have been entirely on the order of a way of painting, much more painterly, much more like what I showed you a couple of weeks ago in American Beauty, much more organized around the idea of drawing with paint than the academic outline into color sort of thing. Uh, so, uh, so I'm showing you now. Have a look at these first couple pictures. The one on the right is Jessica that we all were admiring, endlessly admiring, in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. One of the reasons you want to come up. Fully life-size picture, very, very, very ridiculously impressive. And and the one on the left, much more of a standard sort of portrait woman with a mirror, and but gives you a very good idea of the guy's skills. I don't think, and by the way, he was born about the same time as most of the Boston School guys. I think he was a year older than Benson and Tarbell, a little bit younger than DeCamp. Uh, but the difference in his upbringing, he was a New York trained painter, the Art Students League, and maybe William Merritt Chase, but he was there at the time, and the National Academy of Design, and truly, I don't know who he worked with there. I could find it by looking in the book, but I didn't have time to dig that up. You all want to get this book if you can find it, or maybe there's an online version. Have a good look at it. It's worthy read, a very worthy read. The gentleman died. Bunker died at 29, so it's not one of those things where you feel like uh, anything, at the end of it, you feel like really let down, I guess, in a sense, even though you may know that going into the biography. But what I'm going to show you, I'm just going to walk you through sort of his general look and the kind of thing. I remember most of what I talk about is what paintings look like. I'm not the guy who tells you I know he went to this school and that school and this school and that school. You can tell by looking at the work, so to speak, what school he went to. But what you see is this guy who's very dedicated to the best things about drawing. He's very articulate. He's very meticulous, and he's very focused on being a really good draftsman, and that shows in all of his work. And even even when he gets into broken color, he's that same guy. All this is going to be leading up to the broken color discussion that Lindsay and I had. But so what you're seeing here is a tour. He spent somewhere less than 3 years in Europe, as I understand it, and bunches of that time was wandering around with a couple of his friends painting. At least one of which is on that, by the way, that in the American Arts book that we've been reviewing. So, but you can see over the tree on the left, that's rather a latent categorically. It feels like a person who's really, really dedicated to form. And we were totally in love with that thing. I mean, none of us had the whatever it is to stand out there in front of a tree and paint until the cows come home, articulating every dinky little thing on a tree like that. Maybe some of the new realists would have more feeling for that uh, the hyper-realists, whatever you want to call them, the micro-realists. But nevertheless, that gives you some sense of his background. He's using a little bit of broken color in the grass, but that's actually where the grass does look, and, except that the picture appears to be sort of remarkably brown. Even in person, it does appear to be flat in terms of light. And that's a notable thing. And the other two pictures, look how beautiful they are in terms of their sense of light, but all this is done tonally, much more like what you'd say is the luminists do. You know, it's much more done with values, getting your darks really nice and dark, getting your shadows flat, make good use of your edges, sort of tonalist thinking. But he's got a lovely feeling for light, as you can see in all three of these pictures. Uh, and so, yeah, let's go past that now. So, but here you can see the amount of drawing. I'm showing you the Jung kind on the right. The left two are bunkers. But here you can see he's doing this sort of dead color, muted color landscape. Maybe less so on the lower one, but still nothing like the life, the vibrancy, even of the Jung kind. Jung kind I bring up, by the way, because he's that early influence out of the Dutch background. He's that early influence on Monet. So, but you can see again the dedication. I mean, that is really articulate drawing. That's really, really nice. You can see the dedication to it and the care he takes in articulating the ship and the landscape and so on. I mean, he's very precise. A really, really strong. How would you say it? I want to say strong-minded in terms of the power of truthful drawing. As I said, it never goes away. On the other hand, there's this fantastic influence that's happening. And this, remember, Bunker didn't make it. He was born in 61. I don't think he made it to 91. He was 29 years old. So somewhere in the 80s or so, Monet was having this big impact over in Europe. And I'm showing you two interesting pictures below. The upper two are, of course, Monet. And you can see the broken color and the relatively drawing less, in one sense, kind of thing on the right. Now, the other one has the tree line and all those sorts of things, and the person. And so there's a certain kind of the old school outlines of edges and that sort of thing. I don't mean old school in one sense. I mean less what we eventually associate with Monet is just pure broken color, which when he's even doing a cathedral that probably has sharp edges on it, he's not putting them in his pursuit of this thing, this light color thing. So, but Monet's there taking the lessons, you know, and I say taking lessons, obviously none of them, they just worked around him. They worked around Monet. So here's Monet working, and this is a painting by Sargent. So you can see the amount of sort of broken color he's doing. And Sargent, if you look at Sargent's early stuff, is tonalism effectively. It's like Manet and others, it's just really without the advantage of the range of chroma and the play of color into color. So this is his leap forward, and then you have this one on the right there, that is Dennis Miller Bunker, and so Sargent is having him stand there and look at apparently his own painting, or maybe he's going back and forth. The amount of drawing in this is fairly limited, but again, you can see that pursuit of the broken color all over the place here, which is very characteristic of the pursuit of the color and color movement, plus the color color. What's the right word for that? The vibrancy that you get by not over mixing. So this is what actually happens to Bunker. When we saw this one up in the left, I want to tell you that was one of those that was found at auction for $50, but I could be wrong about that one. There were a couple of those during the times we were there. They all went from $50 to $2 million in about 5 minutes, you know. But the one in the upper left, you can see that, and the picture in person is not very far from this in terms of its impact it has on you. It really is stunning by way of light, and by way of full color light, and yet it's still dedicated. You can see in these areas like here, and he's breaking all this stuff up. He's very aware that he's also drawing form. He never loses that awareness. He's also drawing form. And some people critique some of the Boston School guys a little bit for being less careful about it, or less, what we call, dedicated to it, less in love with it, less part of their métier. But I'm going to go back just a second. Have that in mind there. And I'm going to go back there and just show you the previous, not this one, but these. You see how those two on the left, they just don't have any light. They have value light, but they don't have that kind of vibrancy. And both of them appear to be on gray days. So the other ones, these appear to be in semi-sunny days. This one on the right here does appear to be in a sunny day, but that's not. This is a brown picture in one sense, much like you see the Duveneck boys doing, what you see Joseph de Camp coming back with. Um, Not that these are good examples, because the images online are just never as true to the pictures. Um, but again, it's very much a dedication, as I said, to the massing of darks and getting a really sharp edge where they cut into the lights and pop those lights, or those sorts of things. Contrast is a big, big, big factor. So to get back to that, though, so here he is, and then in the Medfield ones, where he decided to do gray days, and I really feel frustrated that he didn't spend a ton more time doing sunny days, because it's such a joy. These guys have marvelous spectacles of breathing light, breathing sunlight. But in Medfield one, I guess he found a field, and he decided, we do know that he decided to sit out there, and because he could just paint for hours and hours because the light barely changed, which is a conversation that goes on with a number of other New England painters. And it's very true. Sometimes it's hard to find the sunny days you want, and then the whole landscape changes and so on. One of the dilemmas that goes, some of the fun that goes with the territory, right, of the plein air painter. But that's a wonderful example. You can watch the gradation, you can watch the smaller forms, you can watch the strokes change, but you feel this great sense of moving back into the background, this amazing sense of form. He's just never not aware of form. And I'm talking about every kind of form, from the roundness of certain things, the fullness, roundness, to the distance, to the movement way back, the projectedness versus the less projected, and so on. I just show you this one. This is Tarbell, just to show you the dedication to light. And so this is rather akin to that. This one appears to be much more exciting. This is an earlier phase of the start than that. This is obviously pretty close. Probably is a worked up picture where you just said, no, they're done. Where this one doesn't. This actually looks like a start. Again, one of the points that, Lindsay, that you made was that the question of the flat colors. And people misunderstand when I speak about flat colors. Benson said at one point, two flat colors meet, and when they meet, that sharp edge really matters. But he didn't mean that meant that the value over here was going to be flat. It means that the value, when it hits this value, has to be a very specific value, so that we'll cut as a value. So that's what he means when he says flat. But the color of it may not go on more than a blink, like it might just be the under edge of that little pond, and then right away change into the warmer surface. And the same thing on this side over here. It may be very light for a second, but then it changes quickly into the greens over here. So flat isn't necessarily the word you want if you mean smoothed out paint, okay? It's still broken color, except right when you get to that edge, it's not a dithery little fumbled around edge, so it looks broken. It has to be articulate in its sharpness for the Boston School thinking to actually get its effect, which again, as I said before, is much like the ideas associated with getting light effects by edge with the tonalists, which Sargent was great at, and the variety of edges and all the play that goes with that. But these are the ones I wanted to, that brought our discussion together, because Lindsay and I were talking about whether there's some preliminary line work in a Monet, which we haven't found yet. I think I mentioned to you she's looking for a Monet that was owned by Sargent, and it's, I think, down in North Carolina somewhere. So she's hoping to find that pretty soon. But what I found online is these two images. This is a section, and I should have shown you the whole thing, but this is a section of a finished floral. Oh, I think it's in the Gardner Museum. It's a floral arrangement in the Gardner in the what's that called, the lighted center, sort of like a Spanish, what is that called, where the light comes all the way down through the center of the building. Anyway, it's terrible losing words. But anyway, so there's a finished version of it. You can see it's something like a palm tree, but it's finished in the sense of what he's looking for. But what I wanted to talk about in the broken color world, again, is that this picture appears to be started. And by the way, Lindsay points out correctly that, and it's not unusual to find that a lot of these guys appear to have been working on gray canvas. And I think that, I want to say Metcalf, a number of other people appear to be working on a very, just off-white. So you can see it in between a lot of the marks, you'll see this off-white canvas. But I just want to make a couple points to you. First of all, there does not appear to be any line drawing like around a group of something, or like around this, or around something. There's well, obviously you'd say, well, why would he? I mean, this is all just sort of blobs and whatever in the first place. But if this is more finished, you can see that there might have been some reason. You could have said this or that, or somebody else thinking would say, well, there's a tree there. Why wouldn't I draw the tree base? But I want you just to be aware that this pursuit is rather one of the most fascinating things. And if you haven't tried it, and I'm talking about it, and what Lindsay said, what was her word? Uh, you know, glomming on. What was the right word, Lindsay? Um, to Monet, channeling Monet. And as I said, you'll see the same thing with Sargent. But this thing is the broken color Monet mind. And it's so similar to the one I showed you earlier with the loose trees, the autumn-like picture. And but I wanted to make sure you saw this. I want you to see several things about it. First of all, the energy put into the quality of light, right? So this feels like light, feels like the day. These colors, when you look closer at them, look like they got color in them. They don't look like they're white. But he's respecting the need for that to be the most glorious white in the picture. Apparently, it doesn't turn out that way at the end, right? Where this one actually, and that's one of those things where that could happen, where you'll take over this area, make a brighter light for compositional reasons. It could happen, or to create a greater sense of depth, you might want to enhance the light as if that were either a lighter flower or a silhouetted bed. But that's a discussion for a long way down a professional training road, experience road. But you'll see in here that by the way, all over the picture, that there are light notes, there are middle tone notes, there are dark notes. He isn't sitting there saying, where are my darks? And then somehow sort of working on securing the darks. He's all over the place in a classic Monet model, which is very typical of what we say in the Boston School way of thinking, and that is be all over the place at once in the start. And to create a color scheme, you have to have the whole variety through the chromas. The most intense areas should be the most intense. The lightest should be the light, the darkest the dark, and they should all be sitting there before you as you watch to establish the big impression. So, these things, they sort of could be said to be flowers. It doesn't appear at all to be his intention to make them flowers. Obviously, he eventually sees them as larger blobs when he gets to something that's more flower-like. But yeah, so that's largely it. I mean, you'll see lots of, like I often talk about movements. You'll see an orange here that's moving off to something lighter. And those kinds of things are really important when you find them, like say this color moving into this one. When you see these kinds of movements, they help you define or find yourself in the picture. Not that it seems to have contributed much to this phase of this thing. One of the problems, though, many of us have, when you start this way, it's very easy to suddenly go to realism and take the life out of your color notes, trying to get somehow or other the flowerness of the flower. And that can happen. I'm not saying it's happened to him, but I'm just saying that when you see something like this, you wonder why he lost it. And I don't mean to say it's just likely he didn't actually hit it, or it's even possible that he had a brighter day to work on, and he worked on these on a grayer day. Those are all entirely plausible things. Yeah, so, and I talk about the spotting. So you talk about these reds, right? You're just placing them roughly where they go, right? You spot them sort of in the middle of this area, and they start finding their way toward the edge where they start meeting something. And that's true of all the different colors, all of what you want to see all the time. And you're spotting them around, and they're helping you with this thing you call drawing, but I'm saying is not this is drawing, but it's not drawing the way you heard it. It's not the outline of something. It's actually the location, spatial. Everything spatial, in my mind, is drawing, right? So to get 2 points at the right angle to each other is a drawing problem. Right? It's not a color problem, right? It's not a values problem. It's drawing. That's the right word for it, okay? You can say it's a spatial, linear, whatever. The bigger word for drawing should be, and it comes with the territory of being an impressionist, it should be spatial. And so everything from form to angle to all those things that are not color and not value are in that category. That's my best way of breaking it down for my own, to great advantages for myself than it does. I'm wondering, actually, if this is a little bit different time of year. I'm seeing different color, different things, maybe even a different set of, or some of the things have been taken away, other things added in. That may be why we're seeing differences here. This definitely was done at a different time from this one. Almost looks like you went in, and I don't know the size of this one. This is fairly big. But it looks like he went in and with the idea of scouting out, looking for a composition. But again, what we're doing here, what Bunker's doing, and what we do in our way of thinking is we're looking for the color scheme. We're looking for the big impression coloristically, and the way colors play to each other, and the way they weave, for example. The way when you have a red here and you have it in your brush, per Paxton now, you see where else you can put it. You look around while it's in your brush and you see some there. You put it there in these other places. You start distributing that color. It's part of what we're doing. It's just this: we're searching for things like the play, the interplay, the interrelationships of colors and through a picture, right? And there's so much work to do here. And if you can, and you'll do it much better, much more effectively if you just simply stay away from anything that looks like an object per se. The magnificence of Impressionism, and I'm talking about Monet's, even some of his weak work, is in the color play. And when you get to Degas, he drops the drawing. He really is. It almost looks like he's an incompetent draftsman sometimes. But the color, the dance of color, the play that he's found in the interrelationships of color is the stuff of the music of painting. So, what you got to do is put yourself out here, have a really nice time. Just, first of all, find a color thing that's beautiful and all by itself. And if it's so too impossible for you to draw, all the better. Don't. Just start hitting color notes and seeing if you can do that and get the likeness of the thing in color and light with no drawing. One of our discussions came up, Lindsay's and mine. She was in a workshop with me, and I was trying to lean heavily on the idea of managing edge. When you have a sharp edge that produces a light effect, and it's one of your key lights, the edge is a factor in knowing that your color value is right. And so I could be talking about a number of places. Maybe a spot like that would be a good one up in this area. And so, but this one isn't heavy with sharp edges. So when you're talking about still lifes, typically there's a lot of sharp edges. And if you blur your eyes a lot, you can see which ones are key because you'll see that they maintain their projectiveness to your eye. And so that's a factor, but you could do a few of those little things as they come up, So you have that's part of the system. Edges is, but if you did nothing for a while, but just try to get the magic of the color, you'd probably be getting yourself way into Monet's head in a way that these guys all felt was a useful and maybe even wise thing to do. Okay. So anyway, Lindsay, thank you for breaking that to me. I know that's not precisely all you were talking about, but thank you, and thank you all for being here. I want to thank there are a couple of you who've donated already. So Barrett and James, thank you very much. We have a donation button at studio.ingbretson.com, and so thank you, and okay, and see you next time. Enjoy messing with color and get your head around color, the life of the party. Not necessarily the most important thing in any given picture, but I mean, the music is in everything. The music is in form, that's drawing. The music is in interrelationships of shape and shape play, that's drawing. But I'm just trying to get everybody to be a complete painter when I approach these things. So, all right, and that's all for now. See you in the next one. Oh, share, subscribe, and all those things that you've been doing. Comment. Comments are really appreciated. I like the thank yous, but I really like it when somebody says, "What in the heck did you mean?" I can't sort that out. Maybe even send me a picture or something like that. Those are helpful. I mean, don't do it for my sake. I mean, but it's going to be something sincere. It won't work out for me. But anyway, all right, next time.